Welcome, everyone, to session 9. This is really our final session. There is a closing session, but really it will be just tagged on the end of this session for a very brief final word from myself. I'm Thomas Walsh, president of HJI International Graduate School for Peace and Public Leadership, and we've been having an excellent conference, a real conversation about critical issues. We call it the challenges of our time. And of course, we are living through a tremendously difficult contemporary challenge in many parts of the world, but uniquely, we know day by day from the headlines for many of us who are not embedded in the actual existential context. We read about it and from a safe distance, but this is a highly charged and difficult area. I really applaud these speakers because it's challenging even to give voice to issues there. So, but we want to have a dialogue, and this issue, the topic is prospects for peace in Israel and Palestine, and this has been a long-term interest of our wider movement and of HJI International. We have a wonderful group of panelists. Looking forward to this session. Thank you for being here for this final session. And I'm very happy to introduce now the moderator and really the coordinator who pulled this session together, Dr. Idrissa Kone. He is the director of our Doctor of Ministry program and associate professor of conflict resolution and ministry at HJI. So please welcome Dr. Kone.
Thank you, Dr. Walsh, and thank you all for being here in this session. And thank you to our prominent presenter for accepting to discuss and dialogue around this sensitive topic. As you all know, what is happening right now in between Israel and Palestine, and so I want to welcome you all. And the audience, make sure that you are muted during the session, and you can of course write your question in the chat box. Today, our first speaker is going to be Bishop Munib Yunan, and I will go straight and present him. He's give me 1 second. I want to make sure that I have. Bishop Yunan is a former president of the Lutheran World Federation and president of Religions for Peace. He's the Sanhak Peace Prize laureate, which actually is the coming from the founder of HJI as well, and honor for his many decades of service to the promotion of ecumenical and interreligious dialogue and cooperation. He is a Palestinian Bishop Emeritus of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Jordan and the Holy Land. And please refer to his complete bio in the chat box and to see his background. We are so grateful to have him as a panelist today. And without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Bishop Yunan to present his, to have his presentation, which is titled, What Really Matter in Why the whole
why Gaza matters.
Why I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kohn.
Yeah.
I would start my comments with the 18th century German dramatist Lessing, who used to say that if he had one question to ask the Sphinx, who knew everything, it would be, is this a friendly universe? The same thing, I will follow his steps and ask, is this a friendly universe? World. Let me start from a religious point of view. Gaza has opened the appetite of many eschatologists to use the biblical text for their own scenarios of war and possibly Armageddon war. This group is making God a partisan and a warmonger in their way of recycling the prophecies of God. I will tell this group, do not make God an enemy of humanity. God is love and never a God of hatred or of war. Others have resorted to the just war theory of Augustine of Hippo of the 5th century. From Jerusalem, I will tell them, there is no war which is just. All wars are unjust because they are against God's will of salvation to humanity. In addition, the Holy Land does not need any just war. It only needs just peace, peace based on justice. Some others have thought that the conflict in Palestine started from October 7th. In fact, the conflict started in 1948, in the Nakba, and in 1967, when they occupied the other territories. Others, even Christians, resorted to give us lip service, but are silent in front of such a bloodbath. Bishop Dr. Zephania Kamita of Namibia always tells this group, your silence kills us. Speak up for our common humanity. Speak up for nonviolence and oppose the war machinery. Speak up for justice. Speak up for peace. Follow the prophets of the past and those modern times that promote social justice and challenge violence or war. For me, Gaza is now testing the whole world order. It's not Gaza that is in turmoil only. It's the whole world order is once again in turmoil. Admittedly, it has been difficult for some time to establish unequivocally whether we have a well-functioning system that regulates relations between states. It has been advantageous to assume that the international game has rules and that most actors respect them. Western democracies traditionally believe that their values shape their rules. We want to believe these are human and globally accepted views and articles of faith. Wasn't the Universal Declaration of Human Rights approved as early as 1948? Is not the whole idea of the UN based on the rights of nations of self-determination and the prohibitions of wars of aggression? In addition, liberal democracy as a form of government should be the goal and the guiding principle of all nations. But this system is often denied, abused, or neglected, or used for their own political interests. It's not only the dictatorial states that fail, but also the democratic West contributes to the corruption and loss of credibility of this system. A quick look, recent history shows us not only, in the Palestinian-Israeli issue, when we look in transforming its value into resolute action. For example, the mass slaughter in Rwanda, where we are celebrating now 25 or 30 years, and the ethnic in Bosnia are contemporary examples of ineptitude. The UN has been paralyzed. The presidents of the United States and the EU leaders have hesitated with bloodbath and genocide as a result. The principles and ability of international community to act are being tested once again. The triggering Hamas attack on Israeli civilians has been widely and rightly condemned. But Israel's ruthless attempt to eliminate the perpetrators in Gaza has provoked strong actions that now affect large parts of the international community. I would agree that Gaza has given a new serious shot at the front to the detriment of the West. The global South focuses on the long siege and on the destruction of Gaza, which is seen as a violation of the values that the West claims to defend. Here stands Israel's right to self-defense against the suffering of 2 million trapped in Gaza. The essence of this tragedy is that the West has not seriously tried or succeeded in resolving the Palestinian question. Even though it was realized a long time ago that the parties unable or even unwilling to do so, the matter has been left to rest, thus making solutions increasingly difficult, perhaps impossible. I may ask, isn't this the moral failure of the Western countries who seek their own political and economic interests, who seek to sell their arms, and who seek also to be re-elected, but not justice and self-determination for oppressed nations? Nevertheless, it is the West, primarily the United States and the European Union, which should assume their responsibility and show the world of their seriousness of their values to others, to weaker nations, not only to rich and powerful nations. Today, the West is paying the price of its selfishness and its indecisiveness, and the price is high. In large parts of the world, the staunch support for Israel's actions in Gaza is perceived as a double standard. In the West, public opinion is divided, even among those who condemn Hamas. The mass demonstrations of the grassroots who are opposing their government policy is going on. Stale anti-Semitism is renurtured, and Jews without responsibility for Israel's policy are left to endure the most of it. Here again, I emphasize that the conflict is not religious, but political. And I have to emphasize that we have to fully separate between Judaism and the actions of the Israeli government. Many government officials in the West are alerting and precautioning that in the rise of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, it will be difficult anymore to govern their countries. Why did then South Africa take Israel to the International Court of Justice in Hague, accusing Israel's actions in Gaza as genocidal? It's unprecedented action since 75 years. The indictment of South Africa is supported by so many states in the global South, if not all Africa, but opposed by the same countries that opposed it in the apartheid time: USA, UK, Netherlands, and Germany. What does this mean? Are we noticing a new stage in history when the global South is tired of more double standard policies of the West and is tired of neo-colonial approaches that are creeping in the backyard of many countries? It seems that the end of unipolar world is coming to its end. It also seems that the global South is now assuming its role to make this world a multipolar system that respects human rights, self-determination of oppressed nations. At the same time, when Nicaragua takes to the ICJ the government of Germany that it has assisted in the genocide in Gaza. These are new tendencies, new trends in politics, which in the past, no government in the South dared. Today, the South is challenging the double standard of these Western countries, that they send arms and at the same time they send humanitarian aid. This is a double standard. We don't need more arms. We need more justice. Gaza has accelerated this process and empowered the global South and many justice-loving nations to challenge hypocrisy and the moral failure of the West. It seems that the leading South Africa wants to challenge the world with the moral values of the international human rights declaration.
3 minutes.
Pardon?
3 minutes left for your
Okay. And the international agreement. We are today watching history in the making in the global South. Now, how can we solve the problem? For me, today it's the time to come to a final conclusion. First of all, from a Palestinian point of view, we have to restructure the Palestinian Liberation Organization that will be a home for all the factions and all under their wing, and they have to develop a strategy for the negotiations and build a Palestinian state that is democratic, respects human rights, gender justice, freedom of religion, freedom of conviction, and freedom of expression. And secondly, today is the time for the Western countries and the Southern countries to have an international conference where Palestinians and Israelis will be conducted by will follow based on the Arab Initiative of 2002 and the UN legitimacy. The Arab Initiative states that if Israel illegal occupation ends in the Palestinian territories and the Palestinian state will be established on 1967, but alongside the state of Israel, Israel will live in peace, justice, and equality, then 57 countries, Islamic countries and Arabic countries, will normalize their relation with the state of Israel once there is peace and justice. For me, it's now time for justice for Palestine and Israel. If churches are quiet, it is very problematic. It's time that churches speak, and we call that a two-state solution is the only solution that will secure the safety of Israel and give freedom and justice for Palestine. I always say the security of Israel is dependent on freedom and justice of the Palestinians, and freedom and justice of Palestinians are dependent on the security of Israel. This is a symbiotic relationship. Now is the time for peace. Be an instrument and a tool in allowing this to happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bishop, for this presentation. I have a follow-up question. Maybe you can answer in maybe in few minutes. You did mention that politics is the main issue. Do you think, and you also mentioned in your solution that the churches might speak up. How do you think the religion can influence politics? And if that's possible, how is that going to happen in few words?
Well, religious leaders cannot bring justice to the Middle East, but justice to the Middle East cannot come without religious leaders. Because there are certain sensitivities. You know, if we take Camp David, why did Camp David fail? Because you see, they did not consult religious leaders on Jerusalem. Jerusalem is so sensitive, and that's one. Secondly, I think, you know, religious leaders in the world and interfaith dialogue should also concentrate on justice. Not only on speaking on the moon and the skies and so on, but on justice for people. It's our role as religious leaders to bring the dignity of every human being whatever is the religion, being Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, whatever it is, you know, that's our role and maybe religion has failed because sometimes religion was a puppet to the government, but has not been prophetic to speak justice for everybody.
Yeah, very good point. I can see a question coming in the Q&A already, but we're going to finish with other speaker first, and then we can get back to the Q&A. Thank you very much, Bishop Munam. This is really great. Why Gaza matters. Thank you. Well, our next speaker is Mr. Ronnie Smoller. He's the founder of CORE, Society to Promote Dialogue and Cooperation Between Various Religions and Cultures in Finland. Having lived and worked in the Middle East as a journalist, Mr. Smoller knows the area well. Thus, he'll host a weekly radio program dealing with Israel and the Middle East issue. We are blessed to have him as one of our speakers today, all the way from Finland. And I think it might be 11 p.m. there, right? So thank you for making it. And if you want to see his bio in full, you can check in the chat box. It will be there. And Mr. Ronnie, you have the floor for your 15 minutes talk.
Thank you. Thank you. First, I want to thank both my friend Thomas Walsh and you, Professor Disakon, and the organization you represent for inviting me to give my contribution to this important and very current topic that since last October, more than ever, has kept us focused on the sad news emerging from the Middle East. At the same time, it is my pleasure to meet my fellow moderators, Imam Shamshi Ali, and especially you, Bishop Munib Yunan, since our friendship goes back more than 20 years from my time in Jerusalem and Bethlehem, and last we met 4 years ago in Seoul, Korea. Hyvää iltaa, ystäväni, piispa Munib. That was a greeting in Finnish, a language the bishop masters. I want also to greet all those who follow this discussion. When I started to make notes for this session, my focus was in the given topic itself. And while I was pondering from where to start, I soon was carried away by the core issues that appear in front of us. And with that, I mean the three subjects, each coming with question marks. I mean, peace, Israel, and Palestine. Even though I was a former reporter in the problematic but exciting Middle East, I was for decades surrounded by these issues and asked the questions in my interview sessions about these three subjects. It seems that time has turned the questions into an impossible equation or some kind of a cul-de-sac dead end. But little by little, many questions started to pop up until I realized that most questions really had been left unanswered. Normally, questions are followed by answers, but that does not work in this problematic Middle East case, where answers have turned into a multi-layer wall of political, diplomatic, and military complexity. If the Israel-Palestine unresolved conflict is seen as a core reason to most tension in Middle East, then we may ask ourselves, why have the parties, after more than 7 decades, not been able to reach peace? Why do they all differ from other resolved regional problems? Is it because peace between them has been overtaken by ceasefire, armistice agreements, and peace treaties that have ended many wars and military conflicts between Israel and its Arab neighbors like Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria, but not included the Palestinians? One may ask, why were the wars not fought to secure also Palestinian rights? One answer is that since the Palestinian question came up after the establishment of Israel as a Jewish state in 1948, the policy of Arab leaders at that time was to reject Israel from the area. and push the population into the sea, as the propaganda then sounded. But through independence, Israel got a head start before the Palestinian Arabs, when the Jewish inhabitants of the British Mandatory Palestine had accepted the United Nations majority resolution that shared the mandatory between its Arab and Jewish inhabitants. As history shows, the Palestinian Arabs were then given the same rights to independence and self-determination as the Jews got, but their fate was in the hands of the then Arab leaders, whose attitude some 20 years later brought the final blow, meaning the 6 Days War and its consequences. I know that this is a shortcut to many answers to the reality of today, but that needs to be addressed. We have also to face the real questions with answers that can be found in the maps of Middle East region or in the small piece of territory to be shared between Israel and Palestine, or are the real problems perhaps in the disputed post-6 Days War borders, or are they even hidden in biblical texts? But for sure there is question of disputed ownership of the holy city of Jerusalem, Al-Quds, and its holy site, Temple Mount, which stands in the center of both Jewish and Muslim narratives. Here it is irreasonable to ask why were the position of Palestinians not improved when Egypt in 1979 and Jordan in 1994 settled their disputes with Israel. And what happened with the so-called Oslo Agreement between Israel and Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO, under Yasser Arafat in 1993, when the emerging peace process included such keywords as autonomy and right of return for the Palestinian refugees. What has happened since, and what justifies the bloody conflict when parties without any settlement in sight see each other as just enemies? My deep concern is the real question. Does peace in this Palestinian conflict really have a chance? But if we can constructively have constructive answers to all or most of my questions, then there is a chance for peace and harmony that may settle over the Middle East. Then the meaning of salam and shalom is more than hi and goodbye. With these few words, I want to join the discussion itself. That's all by now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wow, that's great. So I do have a follow-up question for you as well. Do you think the misunderstanding of the whole history that you briefly mentioned is also a factor that actually exacerbating the conflict? The history, all the history behind, the Palestinians and Israel itself.
Yeah. Oh yes. I would go back to 1947. When the United Nations decided to split that British territory and between Jews and Palestinian Arabs, or they were called Arabs of Palestine. But as I said, the Jews agreed to that division, but the Arab leaders didn't want to have Jewish state in that area. And here comes the problem, because the Arab leaders decided over the Palestinians' heads, what's going to be their fate. And today we pay for that. Yeah. So I would be realistic. I wouldn't go back in history to explain and to find excuses. But reality today is that Palestinians have the right to their own country and independence as the Jews have. Now is the question of space. Yeah, and that's another question.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure when we get to the Q&A session, this issue will definitely come up. And I want to thank you for your insight. Very important to understand that perspective as well. So let's move to the next speaker. The next speaker, this is a good friend of mine, Imam Shamsi Ali, that I know for many years. He's actually an interfaith leader. Imam Shamsi Ali is also the director and Imam of Jamaica Muslim Center, president of Nusratara Foundation. He is well-known religious scholar and interfaith bridge builder in New York and beyond. I can see him even somewhere, beyond America, for all his work he's doing. For details, actually, you can also refer to the chat box for his background. And Imam who like to tackle the whole issue of justice and human dignity. And I want to give him the floor to present his topic. Thank you. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kone. Such an honor for me to be on the panel along with Mr. Schmoller and Bishop Yunan from Jerusalem. Good morning to all of you from New York. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. At the outset, allow me first to underline that my talk and my presentation, or my opinions in these presentations, is generally about Palestinians and Israelis conflict, and therefore has nothing to do with my interfaith engagement, particularly with my Jewish friends domestically and globally. At the end of the day, I must say also that we cannot agree on every single issue in the world. But if disagreement is unavoidable, let us disagree without being disagreeable. With all passion that we have about Palestine and Israel, I'm sure that our life is bigger than that. And I agree with Bishop Yunan when he said that we must be able to distinct between the Jewish people and what Israelis are doing in Gaza at the moment. Dear friends, the issue of Palestinians and Israelis conflict is truly has been for a long time a very high-profile conflict in the globe. The center of my presentation actually is about around justice, freedom, and human dignity. All human beings, without an exception of any person or any group, are created by God with an inclination to have justice and human dignity. It is just a very inherent and basic human nature. And so nobody will be willingly to accept injustice and his human dignity is taken away from them. The whole issues related to Palestinians and Israelis conflict actually are evolved around these two matters, justice and human dignity. So let me talk briefly about human dignity, why it is so important. As you may remember that in the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights enshrined human dignity, what is called in Islam, in my own religion and faith, it's called karama insaniya, human dignity, in its preamble. And it says, quote, whereas recognition of human dignity and the equal right of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. In fact, Article 1, it says, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. This is very clear for the Human Rights Declaration. Now, from my own, since I'm talking here as a Muslim as well, from Islamic theological standpoint, human dignity is actually believed to be godly, guaranteed, and granted. And he says in the Quran, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, verily we have dignified children of Adam. God the Almighty used the word children of Adam, which means none is left behind when it comes to human dignity. Among the most essential part of human dignity is certainly freedom, what is called al-hurriya in Arabic language. This is a basic human right and human dignity for every man and woman on this planet. For those of us who believe in monotheistic faith, one of the most important meaning of belief in one God is to express that no one has the right to enslave me or anyone else but the Almighty God. Thus, it is very clear that it's a part of our faith. So this conflict actually will never, and I would like to underline this point, will never has its ending without granting the Palestinians right to freedom and independence. It is a crystal clear. So as Bishop Yunan mentioned, that as we want to see Israel to be secure and safe, the only way is that Palestinian state must be independent and sovereign. So that is a basic human nature for everyone, including for our Palestinian brothers and sisters. Now, there are some other challenges in terms of peace here. And I would like to mention this very open. The international community, including the United States, do not fully and sincerely want to see Palestinians free. They half-heartedly say that they used to say, but there are gaps between words and actions. Compared to what happened, for example, to East Timor in Indonesia some years ago. By a single referendum, East Timor got their independence, and the United Nations admitted directly East Timor as an independent country. And the whole world agreed that East Timor is an independent country. The question is, why then Palestinian people are so difficult to get their independence? These are the only people who don't have country, a state on this planet at the moment. The second obstacle to this is the tendency of extremism by the tendency of eliminating one another. And that is what actually is happening at the moment, or is happening in Gaza. So this will bring any side. It doesn't bring any side anywhere except further killings and destruction. This is the first point I would like to underline: the importance of human dignity through freedom and independence. The second part is the issue of justice. Justice is paramount, important, fundamental for peace to happen. Otherwise, the discussion will be nothing but a kumbaya sang from time to time. And that's what we're talking about: peace, 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 but injustice prevail everywhere. So we are reminded by the slogans, and we have heard this a lot in many, many demonstrations: no justice, no peace. This may be seen as simply a slogan, but in fact, it is an inherent human nature to have their rights be granted and guaranteed justly. Once again, coming back to my own perspective as a Muslim, in Islam, justice is considered a foundation of human's life, even in theology. Taking God as the only one to be worshipped is called adl, and the opposite is called zulm, that is oppressions. The opposite of adl, the opposite of monotheism, is shirk, polytheism, and it is considered in Islam as oppression against justice. So justice in Islam is universally universe in nature. Every single matter has its own right. Every part of our physical body has its own right to be fulfilled. So every single human has the right to enjoy justice. This is even more importantly when it comes to the right of all men and women. The Holy Quran states, do not, because of your anger towards others that make you unjust, be just, that is closer to righteousness. As an American, of course, I'm proud of this country and nation. I'm proud because this country and nation is defined not by race and ethnicity, but it is defined by values. And I'm proud of America as a country which is based on great values. And one of those values is about justice for all. And here, it is very important to be honest to our values as Americans. As I mentioned earlier, that's one of the most important but I have to mention once again that it's very sad to say the reality that when it comes to the justice to Palestinians, this beloved country, the United States of America, and many countries in the Western society are taking one-sided position. That is what we have seen in the Security Council. Even a single resolution just to save humans' life, the United States always block with its right to veto. And I think it's very sad. It saddened me as an American. He studied me as a human being. So let me conclude my remarks by reminding also. I think Bishop Yunan mentioned very clearly that the issue of Palestine and Israel is not an issue that goes back to 7 October. It goes back to 1948. But beyond that, I must say, and this might be very sensitive, and some of you may disagree, but the issue of Palestine and Israel is not an issue of conflict. The term conflict involves two equal parties. The issue here is an issue of occupation and colonization. And I think we have to take as such. This is number two. Number three, the United States, as it calls itself as a broker, must be honest to itself, and all certainly major countries, particularly in the West. Otherwise, you have lost the credibility before doing any possible mediations. And so as a man who wants to see peace in the Middle East and around the world, I must say the only possible end to these ongoing cycles of violence in the Middle East between Israelis and Palestinians is to have the Palestinians, for Palestinians to have their land independent and sovereign. With an independent Palestine, Israel will further its advancement, security and prosperity, I'm sure, with peace. And otherwise, these cycles of bombings and killings will just simply continue. So again, justice, freedom, and human rights or human dignity is the answer to the conflict. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mom, for your honest voice in this particular issue. I have a question for you. I can see, you are a, voice that matters in America for sure, not only, in the Islamic community, but beyond. But my question to you is, within the Islamic community itself in America, sometimes, we can see like, the issue, the reaction to the issue itself. And I've seen you, sometime intervening within the Islamic community to bring, peace and help people deal with the situation in a better way. Can you say something about it? How is that help successful, or do you say that is working or not?
There are realities in opposite to idealist things. The ideals is to bring peace no matter what. In the beginning of this conflict, since October 7th, recently, I went with my Jewish friend, Rabbi Mark Schneier, I have to mention his name, to different New York campuses, trying to engage between Muslims and Jewish students because the tension is very high. Mm-hmm. But again, that is my dream. This is my ideals that I have. But simply it's difficult for me to continue these, beautiful ideals with the realities that we have in the ground in Gaza. Mm. Because you have seen over 45,000 people, I think, that got killed. Schools, hospitals, homes, the majority of those are children and women, even houses of worship. The third oldest church in the world got bombed in Gaza. I didn't know that there's church in Gaza so historic before. I just came to know that is the one of the most historic church got bombed, destroyed. With all these situations, it's so difficult for us, people of peace who want to engage in peace, to continue this path. And I've talked this openly to my Jewish friends. I've nothing to do, as Jewish and Muslim relation is something to do with reality in the ground. So as Bishop Yunan mentioned, it is very important to speak up. As it is said that it's enough for evil to thrive when the good people say or do nothing. We consider ourselves good people, but oftentimes we keep silence. So it is very important to speak up and to tell the truth and the justice. And that's what I'm going to continue from now on. It's very important to speak about the reality in the ground. What is happening in Gaza is beyond our imagination. And I'm not talking here as a Muslim. I'm talking here as a human being, first of all, because this is just a common humanitarian issue. And so it is very important that I will continue my job, to educate my community. But sometimes education, has certain realities as well. And so when they say that it's very important to engage in peace, it is difficult for our Christian friend to, when someone slaps on your right cheek, to give another cheek. When it's not all the times happening like that. All right, it becomes like kumbaya. Looks like we're singing. Looks like it's meaningless. When they talk all these beautiful stuff, but the reality is otherwise. It's difficult. It's just difficult. So I'm committed to my mission. Yep. It's a mission for peace and justice. But once again, we really hope that all sides involved must take every possibility to stop this genocide and continued mass killings in Gaza. It's just simply killing the peace.
Okay, thank you. Well, of course, it takes many effort to bring peace. It's just not one side. It takes all sides. Well, thank you to all of you for your brilliant presentation. I think we're going to move to the Q&A session now. So I'm looking in the chat box, and the first thing that comes to me looks like a comment. I'm going to go through and read. One of the ways to promote peace will be to have company jointly owned by Palestinian and Israeli workers. From individual vested interests, the common good and peace will evolve. I'm not sure if this is a question, is a comment, but I mean, you can comment in the comment, but I want to also go ahead with the next question. Bruce Suchar, the first question, I'm sorry, let me see. That was from Joe Rosinos. The next one is Bruce Suchar, which is former, he's a graduate, HJI graduate. He said, I appreciate Bishop Yunan's global understanding of what is happening in Gaza, especially his criticism of the West. It's a little bit long, but I would just summarize the question. I mean, if I understand his question is, what should we do about Hamas, basically? I think his question is probably directed to Bishop Yunan. It looks like the way Hamas is reacting is not helpful, and then he probably wants you, Bishop Yunan, to probably address the issue. Yeah, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I have mentioned it very clearly that it's unfortunate the war is between now Israel and Hamas, and I don't want to go into the history who made Hamas to this position. I think the history can show us who brought them to this point. The Palestinian official point of view is that there is a PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, where all factions should be there and together, We cannot have, as a Palestinians, an army within an army. We cannot have, who will take care of the security? So who will take care, who decides for the war or for the peace? You cannot have, factions. This is what's happening today. But unfortunately, Hamas is also, the right, it's a wing of Islamic Brotherhood in the world. And it didn't take any decision from the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority, which is the PLO, should be re-erected, should be restructured, and should be given its authority in order to. Unfortunately, the PA has been weakened. Yeah. And I want to be very clearly, has been weakened by the state of Israel or by Mr. Netanyahu himself, because he doesn't want two-state solution. And this is a fact, you see. And when we speak about 1993, Oslo gave hopes for Palestinians to have two-state solution. The one who killed Rabin was not the Palestinian. The one who killed Rabin was an Israeli settler extremists, because he wanted to finish this peace process, and they succeeded into that. So I think we are in a position. Are we serious to have a two-state solution today? Or are we going to go only into this academic and discussions? Should we have it or should we not have it? Who should see? certainly, I've seen one of the questions. Certainly, there will be one government for Palestinians. There will be one government that will govern East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and Gaza. This division between PLO, between Fatah and Hamas, has to end now. And there should be one government that will rule, and one government which negotiates with the state of Israel and with the international community.
Yeah, it's definitely. That's a very good point. Imam, do you want to say something about this?
I fully agree that there must be one government. But I want the international community to give a chance to the Palestinians to have their own right to decide for themselves. It's a lot of outside interventions. So let's Gazans and West Bankers come together and form a government. And that is the way. I used to say, we people from outside can help you.
Yeah.
Unless you Palestinians can unite yourself, it's difficult to help you. I can scream from New York. I can scream from the United States. But we cannot help our Palestinian brothers and sisters unless they unite themselves.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we'd like to remind everyone else that minimize your intervention. Let them decide politically. What is the meaning of democracy? Let them decide themselves democratically through elections. And that's what I want to see.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, sometimes we, for the outsiders, when we don't like certain group, we block it. And I think it's happened not only in Palestine, it happens in many countries.
Yeah.
When you like this party, if you don't like it, you block it. And you consider that, an evil party, whatever you give label to that. So I think it's a time for particularly the world powers to give our Palestinian brothers an opportunity to elect their own government.
Yeah, very good.
I agree it's only one government.
Yeah, very good. I think, your point is well taken. And Ronnie, I think you want to address the issue as well.
Yes, I will refer to the previous speaker also. I also see that the parties, they have, among themselves, they have to decide how to organize the first steps in order to come to a negotiation table. I mean, the Palestinians, as we know, have been split between West Bank and Gaza. And now there's hope as PA has a new government in Ramallah. And again, coming to the Israeli politics, you have Netanyahu, who has been more than 16 years, I think, prime minister. I think he is already towards the end of his career. And there's some new younger views also to take over. I mean, I think that we have to go back few steps and organize that the parties will organize themselves again in order to attend peace negotiations. I also wanted just to make a note of that both speakers referred to 1948, meaning to Nakba, which means a catastrophe, meaning that when Israel got her independence, that was a catastrophe for the Palestinians. It doesn't sound so nice, from the Israeli side, to hear that one country and one nation, and the only Jewish nation in the world, has gained independence, and that is considered to be a catastrophe. When you go, you should, as I referred to 1947, if there's somebody to blame, it's then the United Nations in 47, and not that Israel got or declared, let's put it so, the independence in 1948.
Well,
yeah.
May I comment on this?
Yeah, go ahead, Bishop.
Well, 1948, you see, I think there are many in Haaretz who have written that it was Nakba to the Palestinians because we were chased out of our homes. I'm a refugee, Palestinian refugee, because we were dismissed out our homes, by force. Yeah. And that's the reason we call it Nakba, you see. And I think, the problem, my dear Ronnie, is that that many Israelis are not seeing the Palestinian narrative also. And if we want to live together we have to understand both narratives. Unfortunately, if you deny that I am a refugee, and I'm still a refugee, I was dismissed from my home in Beersheba, which is our and 750,000 were dismissed by force. I think you cannot really, I mean, you can say whatever you want, but you have to understand, we have many studies, like, for example, Kufr Qasim, you know it very well. They have written a narrative on both narratives in order to understand, to go forward. But if you do not allow me to express what I feel and what kind of catastrophe and tragedies I went through and I still go through until today, then of course, where will the peace come? I must express my frustration, my pain, and my suffering. When I expressed my suffering, always they say you are one-sided, and this is I don't accept.
Yeah.
When I listen and actually face your story, Bishop Yunan, we are facing actually two nations, two peoples. One, refugees from their homes in Palestine, and one nation that is our refugees from Europe, saved from the Holocaust. And they meet at the same area in the Palestine.
Yeah.
This is outcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is a very good
but it's not the Palestinians who persecuted the Jews. It's the Europeans who persecuted the Jews. We always embraced the Jews.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Smaller, that you acknowledge that the Jewish Israelis are refugees from Europe, and they were welcomed actually very nicely by the Palestinians. But then later on, I think if you're honest to the history, then these refugees from Europe expelled the peoples from their lands, and that is the word Nakba began here, and that's what Bishop Yunan tried to say. So again, we cannot just take one word or one terminology in order to put these all blames on the people without seeing what is going on really on the ground. With all my condemnations, what happened to the civilian Israelis on the 7th of October, we cannot limit ourselves into just 7th of October. Go beyond that and look at what's happening around Masjid al-Aqsa. This is around what happened in Bethlehem, in different places, cities of Palestine by the occupations. And I think there is a consequence. The 7th of October is a consequence with all my condemnation to what happened to the civilians, because we don't want to harm civilians of both sides. Either it is Israelis, Jewish, or Palestinians, Muslims, and Christians. We want them both to be safe. And so for me, we have to be whole, we have to be comprehensive in judging anything else related to the matter.
I think that's a very good point. One important thing about conflict is also understanding other perspectives, where the other person is coming from as well. I think this is key to understand their stories, their pain, their difficulties. And I think Bishop Yunan mentioned it pretty clearly, which is important. We can move with another question. I think there are quite a lot of questions coming in the chat box. Maybe we'll try to address most of them as much as we can. Calm is a current student at HJI. He said Dana Ehrlich, the Israeli ambassador to Ireland, asked last week in a radio interview, what does the international community want? A, three-state solution, one for Israel, one for Palestine, and one for Hamas. Given that Hamas have no interest living side by side in peace with Israel, she was also asked, why does Israel keep building settlement on dispute? Sorry, yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. Why does Israel keep building settlement on disputed occupied land? She didn't answer that one. UPF from Ireland. So, it seems like, we're getting back again to the whole issue that we're talking about. Do you really think the international community want three-state solution? I don't think so, but it's open to discussion.
I think no, we don't want the three-state solution. and we will never accept it. We want two-state solution. This is what Palestinians are asking since 1988. We are saying two-state solution on 1967 borders. Full stop.
Yeah.
I think even after the war, the cessation of this war, which I hope it will be today before tomorrow, you see, the parameters have changed in the Middle East. It's no more the same parameters as before, as prior to October 7th. And we have to see that the international community today is more speaking about two-state solution more than ever. And we hope that the Western governments or the powerful governments will be more supporting the Palestinian Authority now in order to establish itself and not weaken it as before.
Yeah.
As before, I think, please, any thought of three-state solution,
It's
it's
unthinkable.
utopian. It
Yeah.
is out of this way. Only two-state solution. If Hamas wants to be a faction within the PLO, they are welcome. You see, that's the only way forward.
So, I mean, thank you very much. But we have another question. Wink Hosser, he said, Islam is often seen as a religion of mercy. I think this is addressed to Imam. Was mercy not a better option to give the Jews a place in the Middle East than starting a war? South Africa could also have offered an option in the spirit of Mandela. South Africa is friend with China and Russia, Nicaragua also, not real hopeful example of human rights. Double standards are everywhere. Let us stop accusing, but choose for cooperation instead of, how about a solution in the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King and Mandela? So do you really think that, the double standard issues like everywhere, and we should probably, look at things from a spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King and Mandela? Imam, this is addressed to you.
Yeah, I agree that double standard happens everywhere, including taking the words of Martin Luther just for ourselves. When it benefits us, we support those words, because we take it for our own self. But let me go back to the issue of mercy, rahmah of Islam. I think if you study the history of the time of Umar, the second caliph of Islam, he was the one who actually invited the Jewish people to come to Jerusalem after the Jews being expelled by Romans. And then throughout the history, Muslims always protected the Jewish people. When the Jewish people got massacred in Europe, the only one majority Muslim country in Europe, Albania, actually take the Jewish people, to protect the Jewish people fully. They change their names, they consider them family. Those Ottoman empires in the Middle East welcome the Jewish people. So you want to, to mention the mercy of Islam. Islam has been so compassionate to the Jewish, because we don't have any problem with the Jewish people as Jewish, as a religion. But the problem is, again, is Israeli right now occupying the land of Palestinian. That's what the problem is. And so we want that the occupation ends so that we can go back to our original relations. And I'm sure original relation is always there. So, and I am still committed to my mission to spread the mercy and compassion to everyone, including to my Jewish friends worldwide. And that's what we have to do.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's probably why you're here today. So, Ronnie, do you want to say something about that? Yeah.
As I follow the news in the Middle East, from the Middle East, I pay attention to the constant violence and tension and nervousness, what's going on there. And it's not only the two peoples to blame. That tension comes also from outside, as we see now with the case of Iran, for example.
Yeah.
Iran brings also a black cloud above the core issue that we are speaking about. And that nervousness and tension and insecurity and so on, that reflects actually to the politics, in Israel and also outside. And here somebody mentioned the three-state solution. Of course, 3 states is more headache, I would say. and Hamas itself doesn't look for a state. Yes, they want to have two-state solution, but replace Israel. That was Hamas policy. But I would rather look for outsiders' role to calm down the situation, to really to zero as low down as possible, and then to see what can be done. I mean, we have to close out all the Iran, for example, and whatever other items that might hamper the situation. That should, they are outsiders. And it's used, I mean, today, for example, I heard that an Israeli tanker owned by Israel was hijacked by Iranians.
Oh.
For what? For what? I mean, if Iran wants to hit Israel, that's not the way to hit really Israel.
Yeah, I think
But
Mr.
So Imam, let him finish his point, and then we'll get back to you. Ronnie, go ahead, please conclude your point.
No, I mean, I just want really to, we should be from outside, we should be wise and help the parties in order to meet, that they should meet at the negotiation table. This is my idea.
Okay, so I mean, it's clear that in any conflict there are invisible actors playing too, and it's important to also take into account that aspect. Yeah, go ahead, Imam. I think you wanted to say something related to the issue.
Yeah, I just want to say that when you talk about an issue, we cannot take part into just one, one partially. When you talk about Iran, hijack, whatever that you mentioned, Mr. Smaller, it's because Israel bombed actually the Iranian's embassy in Syria recently. So this has become a cycle of violence because everyone cannot restrain themselves. What is the point for Israelis to bomb the Iranian embassy in Syria? What is the point? And that's the questions, except to inflame the anger and the revenge from Iranian side, and Iran has already announced that. And so again, we just need to be just and fair in judging everything else. But my point is, coming back to the first questions, Dr. Idris, about the building of the continuation of building settlements in the Palestinian lands. And that's because in the very first place, the Israelis never obey the United Nations resolutions. Even the recognition of Jerusalem, East Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, is in violation of the United Nations resolution. Even the United States moving its embassy to Jerusalem is in violation of the United Nations resolutions. So what we expect, if all these resolutions are violated, what else we expect from Israel?
Yeah. Well, this is quite. I mean, it's a very complex situation anyway, and I'm glad that we are addressing this issue here with all this sensitivity, taking all this sensitivity into account. I want to quickly move into the next question that's coming from James Egerly. He's a current student at HJI as well. He said the bishop presentation was remarkable. Thank you. My question is, recent events seems to indicate that there's not a consensus supporting a two-state solution among Palestinians, especially among Palestinian political organizations. This proposal has failed over and over again. How is it possible that it could succeed in the future if it doesn't? It failed several times. Bishop, maybe this question is yours.
Well, thank you very much. I think the media is today speaking about Gaza, but they are not speaking about the dialogue, political dialogue that is going on in the West Bank. You see, at the moment, which is among the Palestinians, which is very much deep on these issues. I think many of the questions are just for the media and public relations, but they are not really addressing the real issues. In the Palestinian Authority, there are very serious discussions about what will be the next step, and there are negotiations still with some governments, on what is the next step we are going to do. We understand very well that the settlements are an obstacle for peace, because I think Mr. Smotrich has already declared 8,000 dunums, 8,000 square meters have been confiscated in order to build settlements, in order to make the two-state solution, impossible. And that, of course, the international community is not happy, including the United States has even criticized that, and they said, don't do it. That's one. Secondly, yes, we have people on the Palestinian. We are a normal, Palestinians, we are a normal nation. We are not abnormal. We have some who do not think or believe in two-state solution. They believe in one-state solution, for Israelis and Palestinians to live together in one-state solution. I am one of them who believes in two-state solution, because I think it's difficult. I mean, if Israel is not ready, to give up the occupation 1967 so easily, how can they give up? I think we have to be very logical and to be realpolitik, and not only speak about utopian ideas which will never implement. The two-state solution, we have to speak today about two-state solution and to implement it. But we should not stay there. What about post two-state solution? How will the two nations live together? Will we have confederation? Will we have federation, confederation? What kind of, because we are so much dependent on each other, on many things, It's not only politics, there are other issues. So, I mean, we are also discussing the Palestinians about post two-state solution, if we will have it. And of course, this is a discussion among the which is not known to the media, because the media is putting the Palestinians as if always the bad guys, they are the problem makers, always, and so on. And they are not seeing that we are normal human beings who wants our dignity and our human rights, as simple as that. And that's very important, because the media is making many mistakes. When I hear the media, I no more want to see the media, and neither CNN nor Euronews or others, because they are giving the wrong impression of but they are not discussing. They are not knowing what I know, what we Palestinians are discussing. Like last Monday, it was a big conference on the Zoom among Palestinians. What is the next step? Where shall we go? We are preparing ourselves, because we know the war will stop.
Yeah, definitely.
But we have to know what should we do after the war, with the new government, with the new restructuring of PLO, how can we live with the state of Israel after that? These are all questions which Palestinians are discussing. Please, we are a normal human beings, not abnormal.
Thank you very much for saying that. Well, sometimes media have their own agenda, and it can be difficult. Yeah. So I want to just jump in another question from Peter May. I think this is for Ronnie. He said, how will you suggest Germany should best deal with the conflict, since we still bear an historical debt to the Jewish people, which certainly cannot be repaid for a generation to come?
Well, the German-Israeli relationship is really exceptional. I mean, it's exceptional also in the EU, European Union area. Germany has its own policy, but as we have seen the last few days, at the same time, they are handling or selling Israel arms, but also feeding the Palestinians in Gaza. So this is their way of handling this issue. Of course, the Second World War with the Holocaust is a black cloud above Germany. But as I had been reading the German papers, there is a tendency to get rid of the skeletons in the closets in German. in Germany. And what will the outcome be then, I doubt. But we'll less speak about the weaponry that Germany has really provided Israel. I mean, when we speak about the Red Sea and we speak about the Indian Ocean and so on, it's not a secrecy that Israel has purchased and got submarines from Germany, and you never know, you don't know where they are in for example, this situation where Iran is challenging Israel. I mean, you can see the problems from all different angles. And when I listen to the discussions and also follow the chat page, we are quite easily going into a blaming game.
Mm-hmm.
We should get rid of that.
Yeah.
And to look at the facts and try to build on the facts.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I want to, there's a comment coming from Andrew Wilson, a professor at HJI. He said, this will require Israel to change the narrative. It is feeding its own people that Palestinians as a whole don't want peace, when in fact, the vast majority do. And the PA is the best way to achieve those aspirations. So I think that's a comment. I think that's what Bishop was talking about earlier. He did follow up with Andrew Wilson, follow up with a comment, another comment. He said, unification should remember that Reverend Moon developed a good relationship with Yasser Arafat and even provided him with eulogy for his funeral. So I want to go to the next question from Johan. Thank you, Dr. Andrew Wilson, for your comment. Helpful. It's Johan and Helvi. Johan said, Dear Imam Shamsir, how can you imagine an independent state of Palestine? Hamas governed the Gaza region against the previous PLO, as I understand. Why they are still perpetuating the extension of Israel, in your opinion? I think that's something probably you address somehow, but the question is up there again.
I think I mentioned briefly that one of the obstacles to peace in the Middle East is extremism and radicalism. But sometimes extremism and radicalism must be understood with context. There are some elements within the Palestinian people tend to be radicals because of the situations. If you're forced to leave your homes and lands and you see the killings happens every day, what type of anger that you have? You're going to be angry. And so I don't mean here to defend the Hamas, but I'm here to remind that Hamas came to an existence because of a context, because of a certain background, and that is occupation. If the occupation ends, I think that tendency will end as well. It reminds me, any nation struggles to independence, they will do every possible way to get their independence, because there's a human nature to get independent, to get freedom, to get their justice served. And so once again, I think Bishop Yunan mentioned this repeatedly, that Palestinians people are normal people. They are not abnormal people. They are normal people, and they want as we want. Whatever you want, they want. And there's only one they want at the moment. They want their own sovereign, independent state. Now, what is happening then between themselves within that state, let them decide. That's what democracy is all about. I don't care anymore when Palestinians get their independence. Let them do the election, let them do the democratic process, and they will decide for themselves.
There's a question that is for Bishop Yunan coming from Dr. Walsh, which is the president of HJI. It's a wonderful session and excellent panelist. Bishop Yunan, you bring a unique perspective of a Palestinian Christian. As we have discussed, the Christian community has become a minority community in Israel and Palestine and throughout the Middle East. Does the Palestinian Christian community feel it is being devastated and forced into exile by the ongoing conflict?
Well, this needs a lecture by itself. You see, you cannot answer it just in a short way.
We should do another conference, especially with
You,
Question Dr.
you
Wall.
have to know first of all that in Gaza at the moment there are 800 Christians who are hiding in both Orthodox and Catholic Church, and after 6 months, only yesterday, they could get a chicken meal. You can understand the difficulties in which they are living, because it's also a war of starvation for everybody in Gaza. It's very sad, I think, what's going on. Well, yes, we used to be sometimes 25% as Christians, sometimes 12%. We are today less than 1%. Certainly, the political situation has motivated many of our people to immigrate. And I promise you, after the war in Gaza, there will be no more Christians in Gaza. They will all immigrate because they don't find, you see, they say there is no future for us. They lost their houses. Mm-hmm. They lost everything. Most of them were business people who did not have money. They lost everything. You know, especially Gaza is a special area where Christians are, all is demolished. I mean, anybody of them, they have contacted us and asked us if they can leave, if we can get for them permissions in order to leave Gaza already now. We are not, you see, it's not as easy as it is, but the political situation has affected the Palestinian Christian presence, and we are afraid that if there will be no political solution, I'm afraid there will not be Christians in the Middle East, in Palestine. This is what I'm afraid, and that's the reason, you know, a peace based on justice is strategic for also the continuation of the Christian witness and presence in this country.
Yeah, this is sad to hear. You know, and we are 5 minutes away for closing this. I want to, you know, maybe, you know, give one more question, but also answering this question, I think it would be great if you can give your closing remark at the same time. It's a question that's from Edgar. He said, Jacob had children by 4 women and they all stayed together as one family. Is it possible for the Arabs and the Israelites to unite and become one family of Abraham, who felt forced to send Hagar and Ishmael away, causing historical division and enmity? So you can probably answer the question from your perspective, but also conclude your point. Maybe let's start with Ronnie.
We are human beings. Whether we are the big family or not. I mean, we have been born to live, to build, and to enjoy life, and whether it's in the same area or distributed all over the globe. I mean, we have, each of us have a calling. Let's put it so, and. We have to try to find, you know, room for different values and dreams, and this has to take place also in the Middle East, and that's why I'm coming back to my point that the Middle East is so splitted between different views. I don't speak about religions because there is something. It's a glue that keeps societies together. But you have so many different movements and dreams, you know, revolutionary movements and so on that really want to break the Middle East into a puzzle, game puzzles, and that's what I'm afraid of, and that has been my message when I have been working here in Finland to have this to find the common value between the different cultures, prevailing.
Well, thank you for all your work you're doing, and very appreciate the fact that you are here to contribute in that level. Imam, you have maybe 1 minute to maybe tackle this question and also give your final remark.
There is no doubt about that. I mean, the history tells us that Jews, Muslims, Christians have lived together side by side peacefully in the area up until Israel came into existence in the Middle East, particularly in Israel at the moment. But the fact Israel is a state, and we acknowledge the existence of Israel. But I think the best way to come back to the history, to that beautiful memory of the past, is for Israel to change its behavior. So with that, let me remind this one. What Israelis are doing at the moment in Gaza is actually is planting a danger, not only for the Israeli Jewish, the Israelis in the Middle East, but possibly for the Jewish worldwide. Because there are some people around that generalize that looks like Israelis' actions represent Jewism or Judaism. And that is really very dangerous in the long term for our Jewish friends. And it's very important to let's remind each other, for a sustainable peace, this must stop. What Israelis is doing is truly continuing a destruction, not to the Gazan, first of all, actually to the Jewish people worldwide. And you can see the reaction of the world. I'm not talking Muslims here. I'm talking about the world. What happened in Latin America, how they reacted to the situation, South Africa, and many other countries. And so my point is that it's very important to remind each other that this war, this genocide, and this mass killing must stop.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move to Bishop, to your final remark.
Well, thank you very much. I think the question which is posed, I am afraid of such a light theology, because I think, the Christian Zionists are the ones who are trying to divide humanity, to say that Abraham brought Isaac, and from there came the Judeo-Christian, tradition, and Hagar brought Ishmael, and there brought the Islamic, tradition in order to I mean, this is a very shallow, ideology which I cannot accept. We are the children of, as Ronnie said, we are children of God, all of us. There is no Jews, Christian, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, whatever it is, you see. And all of us deserve to live in dignity, in our human rights, you see, as God meant it. And I think, for me, that is very, very basic. Don't use the Bible, to oppress us. Use the Bible to find the justice there. And the Bible is only a book of justice and not a book of injustice. That's my message. I think justice is possible in the Middle East if the politicians and the Western politicians will be serious and not give us lip service only. It is possible.
Thank you very much. I am honored to, receive all of you in this session, which was quite deep sometime and informative. And I want to thank you all, the participants. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all the questions, but I can see that this was we have like about more than 63 comments. There were discussion going on as well. Thank you for your contribution. And I want to give back the for the next session, because Dr. Thomas Walsh will be leading for the next session. Please, you can also join us for that session, which is the closing session. Thank you very much, and bye. Dr. Walsh.
Thank you, Dr. Kone. A wonderful session, and I really thank Bishop Yunan and Mr. Smolar and Imam Shamshi Ali for speaking openly and with great civility. Certainly not everyone is in agreement. The chat column was bubbling with ideas, and that reflects our reality globally. So thank you all. I just want to conclude, really not this session alone, but the entire conference, to thank all those who put together these 10 sessions of the conference, particularly our coordinators of the sessions, who also in many cases served as moderator. Dr. Kone and Mr. Edgerly and Alan Jessen, Lynn Walsh and Dr. Mickler, Dr. Shimio, Dr. Wilson, Dr. Thomas Ward, and I'm sure I didn't mention everyone, but I want to thank them, the moderators, all the panelists and speakers. I think speaking on behalf of HJI, we're deeply gratified by the outpouring of interest in this conference. We will, and the proceedings are recorded and being posted even now on YouTube, and we will have some follow-up communications, particularly with our panelists. We do expect to have this conference annually, but also develop some ongoing consideration of many of these topics, such as this topic we've just sought to scratch the surface in addressing, and as well as others, whether the United Nations or issues of general worldview, of Christology, and of economic theory, etc. There's a lot of potential for HJI to partner with others to move forward in an effective way. We want to become a convening center that brings together leading figures to provide kind of thought leadership, wisdom, insight that can impact the world positively as we work primarily to achieve peace. And I think all of you are committed to that, despite having different perspectives. And I speak there generally to our entire audience. So just my closing word is thank you. I thank our tech team that worked so effectively, people like Angela Buczynski, Stephen Boyd, Frank Lagrateria, Ken Son, Myung Eaton, and I'm very grateful to all of you and the faculty and staff of HJI and our alumni. Thank you all. This concludes the first International HJI Conference on Peace and Public Leadership, Addressing Challenges of Our Time, and we did that today. So there's more to come in the future, and thank you all. Please, let's do this together.
Thank you very
God
much.
bless.